In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, freak shows became a cornerstone of American entertainment, pulling in curious middle-class crowds and turning huge profits for showmen. These strange and spectacular exhibitions gave people a rare glimpse into lives they couldn't quite understand, part wonder and part misunderstanding. Today, we're going to take a look at the lives of 15 such circus freaks you'll never believe actually existed. These people didn't just shock. They redefined what it meant to be different in a world obsessed with spectacle. Number 15. Dolores Pullard. Dolores Ann Pullard was born in 1946 in the small town of De Quincy. By her teenage years, she stood over 6 feet 10 inches tall and weighed more than 430 pounds. Because of her deep voice and towering presence, reporters misunderstood her own words and began printing that she was 8 feet 2. The number spread, and soon she was headlining sideshows as the tallest woman in the world. Her true height at the time was closer to 7 feet 5 inches. She wore size 23 shoes and was often featured in newspapers across the country. In her early 20s, she joined the Walter Weymouth sideshow and married a fellow performer named James Johnson. Dolores suffered from a tumor pressing on her pituitary gland and underwent surgery in 1971 to remove it. Although she initially survived the operation, her condition worsened, and she passed away on May 19, 1971. Sadly, she was just 24 years old. Number 14. The Sales Quadruplets. In 1956, a woman named Elena Seco gave birth to 4 sons, named Bernardo, Bienvenido, Benjamin, and Bernabe Salas, in a poor barrio of Buena Vista, Marinduque. At the time, they were the only known quadruplets in the Philippines. Their arrival caused a national stir. Doctors, journalists, and politicians traveled to see them. Movie stars sent gifts. Tourists peeked through hospital windows. The babies were transferred to the provincial hospital, where Dr. Pablo Marquez supervised their care. 4 nurses and a governess were assigned to them, and for years, they lived as state wards. Donations from private citizens and civic groups poured in. They eventually attended a public school and were often asked to recite poems, sing, or perform dances for visitors. Despite their early fame, the Sales brothers vanished from public life as adults. Their story, once a national sensation, quietly faded. But for one moment in the 1950s, 4 boys from a rural island became the most watched children in the entire country. Number 13. The Human Trunk. Nikolai Kobalov was born in 1851 in Russia, totally without arms or legs, likely due to amniotic band syndrome. His wealthy family gave him support, but Nikolai's determination came from within. As a child, he taught himself to eat, dress, and even write, using only his shoulder stump and chin. At 18, he took a job as a clerk. By his 20s, he was performing across Europe under the name The Human Trunk. His act included threading needles, loading pistols, and writing letters, all with his stump. He later toured with a lion cage stunt that stunned crowds. He married a Prater Park employee, Anna Wilfert, and they raised 11 kids. 6 survived. Despite the challenges, Nikolai stayed active on tour, learning multiple languages and charming royalty. He performed for Tsar Alexander III, Kaiser Wilhelm II, and Queen Wilhelmina. Until his death in 1933, Kobalov remained one of the most respected disabled performers in Europe, not pitied, but applauded. Number 12. Ratica and Dudica. Ratica and Dudica were conjoined twins born in 1888 in Orissa, India. Though joined only by a band of tissue, their village saw them as a curse from God. After an attempted separation by their own father, the girls were taken in by local monks. In 1893, a London showman named Captain Coleman acquired them and brought them to Europe. They toured widely, often paired with a dwarf performer named Peter the Small. Coleman reportedly treated them more like daughters than props, and the twins seemed content until Dudica fell ill with tuberculosis in 1902. Desperate to save Ratica, Coleman allowed a French surgeon, Dr. Eugène Louis Doyen, to separate them. The operation was filmed and promoted as a medical breakthrough. Dudica died soon after, and Ratica passed away the following year, also from TB. She spent her last days alone in a Paris sanatorium. The surgery footage later appeared in grindhouse-style freak films, an eerie legacy for two sisters who just wanted to survive together. Nothing more. Number 11. Captain Don Leslie. Don Leslie, also known as Mr. Circus Sideshow, spent more than 5 decades swallowing swords and defying death in front of live crowds. He got his start in the 1950s under Carlos Leal on the Cristiani Brothers Circus. At just 18, after months of battling his gag reflex, Don managed to swallow his first sword. He later trained under Alex Linton, a top-tier performer who once held the record for swallowing 4 27-inch blades. Don worked nearly every major circus, Ringling Brothers, Clyde Beatty Cole, King Brothers, and more. But swords were only the beginning. His list of acts included fire eating, the electric chair, the bed of nails, escape routines, and even running entire sideshows. Despite a few close calls with the swords, what ultimately killed him wasn't the blade. It was the gasoline used for fire eating, which gave him cancer of the throat and jaw. Captain Don Leslie passed away on June 7, 2007, remembered by many as a legend of the sideshow. Number 10. The Madagascar Lady. Ettie Reynolds, often billed as the Madagascar Lady, was one of many performers with albinism who found work in Victorian-era sideshows. Albinism, a genetic condition resulting in little or no pigment in the hair, skin, and eyes, was both exoticized and feared in 19th century Europe. Albino performers were seen as magical or otherworldly, and Ettie's pale features only deepened that fascination. She followed in the footsteps of others like Millie Lamar and Little Ida, who were branded with titles like Fairy Queen or the Beautiful Albino. These women weren't just hired for talent. They were sold as living myths. Sideshows offered rare safety and income, but the trade-off was lifelong objectification. Ettie's image still circulates among collectors of vintage circus ephemera, usually dressed in lace, framed by parasols or velvet drapes. While little is known about her private life, Ettie's stage presence embodied the contradictions of her time, treated as both a marvel and a misfit, just for looking different. Number 9. Duchess Leona. Leona M. Parks, billed as Duchess Leona or the Beautiful Miniature, was one of Dreamland Circus's most recognizable acts during the 1920s and 1930s. She performed at Coney Island and other venues, where her small stature due to dwarfism made her a star attraction. While sideshows often exploited physical differences, Leona stood out for her presence and poise. Her elegant costumes and carefully crafted image turned her into more than just a curiosity. She was admired for how she carried herself, especially in an era that rarely gave performers like her any dignity. Much of her career remains underdocumented, but rare photos from the American Philosophical Society archives show her as a featured performer with real charisma. Even in a crowded lineup of oddities and exaggerations, Duchess Leona held her own with grace. She wasn't just a gimmick in a poster, she was a full performer with her own draw. To the audiences of the time, she was mysterious, refined, and unforgettable. Number 8. Black Scorpion. Jason Black was born with a condition called ectrodactyly. It caused his hands and feet to form into claw-like shapes, which he later turned into part of his identity under the stage name Black Scorpion. He didn't want pity, and he didn't want to be hidden. Instead, he built a persona that was equal parts sideshow performer, surreal artist, and underground icon. In 2006, he joined the 999 Eyes Freak Show and later performed at Coney Island with sideshows by the seashore. Wearing his signature multicolored bandit mask and claw gloves, he created bizarre illusions and often included puppets, satire, and performance art. He invented a stage trick known as the hammer hands illusion and even consulted for the television series American Horror Story, Freak Show. Offstage, he played music with his band Built by Snow. Jason Black didn't hide his hands. He branded them, performed them, and turned them into something folk remembered. Number 7. Tona Maria. Tona Maria was born around the year 1782 in the Brazilian region of Minas Gerais. She belonged to the Amore people and was later taken to London, where she became a public exhibit under the stage name Venus of South America. Promoters pointed to the scars on her body, nearly 100 in total, and told onlookers that each one marked a sexual offense she had supposedly committed. Well, of course, it was totally crap. Her large frame, dark skin, and lip and earplugs were treated as exotic curiosities. She was described as having seduced 3 tribal chieftains, though that story likely came from the showmen, not from her. For British audiences in the early 1800s, she represented both fascination and fear, a woman of color turned into a spectacle. Scholars later wrote about her as a symbol of how black and indigenous women were reduced to myths for white audiences. Maria's life was never hers alone. It was shaped, marketed, and misunderstood by people who never really saw her. Number 6. Tony, the Alligator Skin Boy. Tony Harris, known to showgoers as the Alligator Skin Boy, earned his living turning a lifetime of hardship into a kind of fame. His thick, cracked, scale-like skin gave him the appearance of something between human and beast. Sideshow barkers billed him as having alligator skin, elephant hide, or even armadillo armor, depending on the day and the town. His condition, though pretty painful, fascinated audiences who had never seen anything like it. Harris joined the traveling shows in his youth, touring with carnivals across the South, posing under hot lights and humid tents for dimes at a time. Elizabeth Anderson wrote that Tony had the gentlest eyes of anyone ever billed as a freak. Away from the Midway, he loved fishing and playing harmonica by the fire. To thousands, he was a curiosity, but to those who knew him, Tony was a soft-spoken man who turned rough skin into resilience. Number 5. Claude Ambrois Surah. Claude Ambrois Surah, born in Troyes in either 1797 or 1798, became known throughout Europe as the anatomical man, or the living skeleton. In London, Paris, and Bordeaux, crowds gathered to see his painfully thin frame, 5 feet 7 inches tall but weighing barely 78 pounds. His upper arm measured only 4 inches around, his chest sunken and ribs sharp as wire. Doctors studied him, artists drew him, and the curious paid to gaze at what they called a living anatomy lesson. Francisco Goya even sketched him after seeing his act in Bordeaux in 1826. Behind the curtain, Surah was shy and soft-spoken, embarrassed by the spectacle his body had become. His tours lasted into the early 1830s, his last known appearance in Dinan in 1833. Later, it was said that a tapeworm had starved him from within. No one ever found his death record. Some wondered if he kept touring, the thinnest man alive, haunting the fairs of France. Number 4. Xandow. Johnny Gilmore, billed as Xandow the Quarter Boy, the Turkey Boy, or the half-man from Morocco, turned what might have been a quiet life into a sideshow sensation. He was born in 1913 in Marshalltown of Iowa, without the lower half of his body. He grew up one of 10 children in a working family, attending school and even junior college before joining the circus in his 20s. My mom and dad were perfectly normal people, his pitch card read, and naturally it was quite a shock when I was born this way. Xandow toured with traveling carnivals in the 1930s through the 1950s, moving with incredible agility using only his arms. Fans remembered his humor, his confidence, and the pride with which he signed photographs at state fairs. He didn't play the part of a victim. He was an entertainer, witty and magnetic, proving night after night that dignity could live even under the harshest lights of the freak show. He was a legend. Number 3. Ivonne and Ivette MacArthur. Born May 14, 1949, at Ella General Hospital, Ivonne and Ivette MacArthur were joined at the top of the head, vertical craniopagus twins who defied every prediction. Doctors said they'd never walk, never learn, and might not live past infancy. But they did all three. Raised by their mother, Willa MacArthur, they briefly toured with the Royal American Circus to pay medical bills, earning $300 a week. The girls grew into bright, funny, deeply connected women who could walk, dance, and even sing in perfect rhythm. As gospel performers, managed by singer Linda Hopkins, they toured churches across America, their harmonies as seamless as their joined skulls. Despite being denied classroom education, they earned high school diplomas through home study and later enrolled in community college. Independent and proud, they shared everything: food, cigarettes, laughter, even language, often saying I instead of we. In 1992, they died together in their California apartment, inseparable, even in death. Number 2. Kitty Fisher. Catherine Maria, Kitty Fisher, born in 1741, became one of the first modern celebrities, famous simply for being famous. A former milliner, she rose to notoriety as a courtesan known for wit, beauty, and scandal. Portraits of her by Sir Joshua Reynolds turned her into an icon of the 18th century allure. Thousands bought engraved prints to hang in their homes. When she famously fell from her horse in St. James's Park in 1759 and exposed herself, London gossip columns exploded, but Kitty cleverly turned shame into spectacle, sitting for another portrait that very week. She dined with noblemen, rivaled Lady Coventry, and was said to eat a 1,000-guinea banknote on toast, a legend Casanova himself repeated. In 1766, she married M.P. John Norris and briefly lived the life of a respectable lady before dying young at 25. Buried in her finest ball gown, Kitty left behind a legacy of charm, scandal, and early celebrity culture. Number 1. Felix Vera. In 1902, Felix earned the nickname the Elastic Man for his rare ability to stretch his skin to remarkable lengths. He had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a connective tissue disorder that affects collagen and grants the skin unusual elasticity. This rare condition allowed Felix to pull and twist his skin in ways that seemed unreal to audiences. He became a fixture in early 20th century curiosity shows, where he demonstrated his flexibility on stage to shocked and fascinated spectators. But beyond entertainment, his condition attracted serious interest from the medical community. Scientists and physicians examined him closely, trying to understand the boundaries of skin and tissue resilience. Werle's presence in sideshows was more than novelty. He stood at the intersection of science and performance. His exhibitions challenged the audience's perception of normal anatomy, and his rare gift helped define an entire era of anatomical curiosity. Felix wasn't just elastic. He became a visual symbol of the body's extremes. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you very soon.